had to figure out how I'm going to situate myself here. I hadn't kind of planned on this. Ah, you who add house to house and field to field until there's not room for anyone else, and you are left alone in the midst of the land. Anybody know who said that and when? It's a quote. It's been echoing in my mind for the last number of months, really. It comes to us from the prophet Isaiah. If you want a precise reference, Isaiah 5:8. Written in the 8th century, so a long, long time ago. In Isaiah's time, Isaiah was concerned about the accumulation of capital, the adding of house to house and field to field. In the note in Robert Alter's translation of the Hebrew Bible, it says, this is about rich people exploiting the poor and marginalizing the peasants from the land, from their possessions. It was the burning issue for Isaiah, at least, in his day. And I think even more, the words of the prophet are relevant to our day. That is, they are more relevant today than they were in the 8th century. The character of our age is the doctrine of more. We believe in more. We trust in more. We desire more. We want more. If a little bit is good, more is always better. That's what we want. We desire it. We crave it. To be alive today, at least in our culture, is to be caught up in a vortex of acquisitiveness. We sometimes think, as modern people, that we don't have doctrines. We're not doctrinal people. We reject doctrines. We look at the doctrines of the church and we say, oh, that's old-fashioned. That's for people who didn't know any better way back when. But we have a lot of doctrines in our time. And one of the doctrines that we have is the doctrine of more. It's crucial. It's essential. Just try to survive in this world without believing in the doctrine of more and see how far you get. It's an expectation placed on each one of us. And we're trained to act according to the doctrine of more. Jesus said, when you pray, pray this way. Give us this day our daily bread. And like the prophet Isaiah, speaking both to his time and to ours, the words of Jesus come racing through the ages to our own age, challenging us, calling us to something different, calling us to imagine that there might be something else besides the doctrine of more, our daily bread. And also, for Jesus, going back to the past in his own tradition to a story that's essential to understanding the doctrine of more and to understanding the alternative to the doctrine of more. And this is a story that we learned in Sunday school. Whether we remembered it or not, we learned it. And most of us remember it. The Israelites had just just entered the wilderness of Sinai, just entered. So in chapter 15, we have the great songs of Moses and Deborah celebrating the crossing of the Red Sea into the wilderness of Sinai. In the next chapter, the people are grumbling, they're murmuring, they're complaining against Moses and against Aaron because they're hungry. And they actually have a point, usually a pretty good point. They say, hey, back in Egypt, we ate our fill. We had all the food that we wanted. We weren't hungry at all. There was more in Egypt, and there's nothing here. Have you taken us into the wilderness to kill us all by starvation? We're starving here. What's going to happen to us? So God hears, the God who is God, the God who is, hears the people and says, I am going to rain down upon these people bread from heaven, to sustain them day in and day out. And so the people looked at this bread and they said, what is it? And so they called it manna, which means, what is it? And they would collect some, and there was enough for everybody to have need. But a few enterprising members of the group decided that they wanted more. If a little bit of this is good, more surely is better, and they wanted more. And so they did what many of us might have done, and they collected more than they needed for their daily bread. And it became wormy and smelly. It stank. It was stinky. It became stinky and worthless when they tried to get more. And Moses was furious. This story reminds us that God's people were called to be a contrast people. They were called to be different than their own age, different than the character of Egypt, different than the spirit that characterized Egypt. They were to reject the doctrine of more. Part of what it meant to be God's people was to reject the doctrine of more. We Mennonites in our Anabaptist tradition have often emphasized what we call simple living. And I'll be honest, I'm very skeptical of the phrase simple living. And part of the reason I'm skeptical about it is that every person in here, well, almost every person in here has a complex life. No matter how much they say they believe in simple living, our lives are complex. I'm sorry, but to be alive today and to have the kinds of commitments that we have to other people, if your life is not complex, you don't have enough friends. Our lives are complex. But to hold up simple living as a virtue is to recognize something, right? It's to recognize that the doctrine of more does not lead to more. The doctrine of more leads to less. So this is such an important concept for us. Our most famous publication in the last 100 years as Mennonites is a cookbook called More with Less, of all things. We recognize this. Somehow, deep down inside, we recognize this. And the Anabaptists believed that the primary distinction, this comes from John Roth, the primary distinction that they recognized in their time was a distinction between church and world. By rejecting infant baptism, they place themselves on the outside of their social order. And they could recognize its character. They could recognize the ways that it fell short of God's calling. And so they contrasted between church and world. Of course, the danger in that is we become to believe in ourselves rather than believe in God. And we believe that we are the solution to the world's problems. I don't think Anabaptists believe this at all. But they were able to contrast God's calling on their lives with the character of the age. And that's the gift, I think, that we have when we pray, give us this day our daily bread. Where we are able to place ourselves outside of the age. We are able to hear the deep imagination of God speaking into our world, and we're able to lean into it and to recognize that this vortex of acquisitiveness is a lie. I've been thinking about three questions, which the answers to which characterize the age in which we live. The first question is, what do we hold sacred? What do we hold sacred? What does our age, I'm not talking about us individually, each one of us individually, I'm talking about our age. What do we, the human beings living in this time, in this place, what do we hold sacred? The second question is, in what do we trust? What do we trust? And the third question is, what do we desire? What do we love? What do we want? What is the character of our age? And what is our calling as Christians? And what's the difference? How does our age answer these questions? And how does the church answer these questions? So I've been thinking a lot about this. And there are different ways to answer these questions. It's the questions, I think, that are important. But one of the answers regarding the age in which we live is more. What do we hold sacred? More. More technology, more stuff, more money, more houses, more fields, more pleasure, more fun, more. I want more. And I want to make sure that I can have access to more, so I'm going to make choices in my life to ensure that I will have more. Right? We hold that sacred. And the people who have more are held in the highest reverence. We know who they are and where they live. And it ain't in Goshen, Indiana. The second is, what do we put our trust in? More. We put our trust in more. We are only safe, we are only secure, we can only rely on what we can accumulate, and that is more. Technology, my goodness, technology is a tool of more. Money is a tool of more. We create money because we can accumulate it, right? More. And what do we desire? You know the answer. More. More money in our pockets. More fun, more pleasure. It's all about more. We believe so deeply in the doctrine of more in our society that we are told that the value of our lives is tied to more. When a young person is growing up, they are taught to think about their human capital. You read about this. Their human capital. What is the earning potential that you have in your life? And it is your bounden duty in the doctrine of more to maximize that potential in the service of more. Friends, we believe this. This is the doctrine of more. This is the character of our age. It's sad. And as Christians, it's crucial that we can recognize the character of our age and recognize God's calling on us to something different. Not more, but freedom from more. The doctrine of more places extraordinary burdens upon us. It says to each one of us, to be somebody, to be worth something, you must have more. And we are taught to value this. Jesus says, "Give us this day our daily bread." Yet the society that we are in tells us, demands that we pay a double price for more. There's a double price to be paid for more. The first price is look what's happening to the world in which we live. The solution to our problems, the problems that we face as a species, the problems that we face as a planet, is not more. We're told that it is. It's part of the doctrine of more, right? We can solve our problems with more. The solution is not more. More exacts from us a heavy price. And we are paying that price. The heavier price that we pay is that we miss out on what truly matters. There's only one desire that satisfies our hearts. Only one. Only one. And that's the God who created us, who loves us. And we are only free in the desire of that God, the God who is. And so we sing this song. We're going to sing this song. Come, bring your burdens to God, for Jesus will never say no. It's strange because we all know suffering, right? We all know suffering in our lives and pain. And it sure feels like Jesus says no sometimes. And in the framework of an age that burdens us with so many demands, with its doctrine of more, there's only one who will lift our burdens, and only one who will never say no. And that is Jesus. Come, bring your burdens to God.